I want to thank you for being here. And um, while I try to have preset questions, somehow these conversations never go the way that they're planned to. So we'll try to start out in a more, we'll call it as formal as I can get. Um, and then let's see where it goes. So the first question, look, I want to thank you for being here because you were sent a rather long form. And I got to admit, I'm really impressed with the fact that you actually filled out that form. And not
I'm
only
so
did you
trained.
fill it out, but you really you went into detail. I'm like, if you give me a five little question form, I'm going, screw it. I'm gone. I'm out. Like, so I'm really impressed you did that. So what prompted you to fill in this form?
Well, I fill in forms all the time, Alan. I do a lot of accreditations, applications for awards, competitions. I
Hmm.
and I'm constantly reflecting on what we do as a business. And so the thing about it is, it's just second nature to me. I've been doing it for a long, long time. Worked with some very large organizations. So things like capability maturity model integrated, Baldrige, or European Foundation for Quality Management. I've been involved in these things for a long, long time and given, filling in different forums, reflecting on it, I providing evidence. And right now, B Corp's a big thing. I'm doing the
Hmm.
sustainability development goals. So I'm constantly doing things like this. So when you see a forum, it's just second nature to me. And the only thing is sometimes I can get lost in it, in this reflection and in the question. And I sometimes have to pull myself back and reduce it by several pages.
Okay, so you're definitely the polar opposite of myself. Uh, and then the next question that I have for you is in regards to the name of the podcast, Manufacturing Mavericks. Um, there I'm curious about opinion because obviously part of it is we want to talk about manufacturing. So that's a given. But it actually adds to a long name. And the word Mavericks is almost a little self, and I'm trying to think of the right word. It makes us sound really important. And I try to be a humble individual. So I'm always curious about what your opinion of the name Manufacturing Mavericks, what does that bring on? What's the emotion, the feeling that that brings on to you?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's two words there. The manufacturing side of it. My background's production engineering. I studied and became a production engineer back in the early 80s. And the whole thing about it is I see the impact as a production engineer I can have improving organisations, the massive impact that you can actually do with that toolkit that I learned. The maverick side of it, I've always seen myself as a bit of a maverick. You go against it, you're not frightened to stand up and say, no, that doesn't work. Go against the flow. I bring about change. Do what you think's right based on your values. Become a change agent. I do things very differently, and I've fallen in love with organisations and fallen out with organisations, and they've done the same with me. But I've always been true to myself. Have I always been right? I don't know, Alan, but I'll tell you something. Within myself, I felt I was doing the right thing for the right reasons, not selfish reasons, but based on my values. based on what I actually saw, the output and what was trying to do. And I fought against a maverick sometimes, and I don't know, I'm not going to argue with your definition or anything like that, but what I would say to you is, I think a maverick is beyond politics, organizational politics, and is focused on the goal of the organization and puts that first. Whereas I think in my time, the I've been up against some very heavyweight international politicians and organisations, and I've always focused in on the job, on the project, on the deliverables, and put, even if that goes against, maybe my personal objectives, I've put that first, even to the point where it impacts my own health. I focus in and getting that across, and I've been, fighting within organisations, making things happen, trying to get it done, trying to overcome obstacles all the time. And to me, that's what a maverick is. A true change agent, a change leader, somebody that can bring about change in an organisation for all the right values.
And I agree with you. It's that out of the box thinker. But I think that what struck me most in that, and I appreciate it, is the remaining true to yourself. I think that swimming upstream, like really fighting the current, is not an easy thing to do, and it takes guts. It takes a sense of self strength to be able to disagree. It's easy to go along. Sometimes opinions are not appreciated, and I know that I go through it all the time. In our organization, because of what we're structured in terms of workflow and the critical path when we're going through an implementation. The We know, or look, I've been doing it long enough. I can see a failure coming a mile away, and you can point out as many times as to where you believe an issue is going to happen, and sometimes they just don't listen. They don't value your expertise. They don't value your input, and as a result, projects fail.
The term I use is groupthink. There's a lot of groupthink within organisations, and you need somebody to step away from it and challenge it. And the classic example was the Bay of Pigs with Kennedy, and he learned from that, and he actually employed people. I would probably call them mavericks to challenge it.
Yeah, and I usually find that when we talk about a ticking time bomb, I always, and it's interesting because the larger the team that you work with, the greater the possibility that there is someone in there that has a hidden agenda that they don't want the project to succeed. They will do everything that they can to sabotage it, obviously very discreetly because their management, they're being brought in because of their management role. But and again, you feel it. You feel it, you see it, you can actually question it, and they get supported nonetheless because it's basically an us versus them scenario where they feel that they need to support their team over our goals.
Yeah.
So I thank you, because that was, like I said, that was great. That was a great introduction. And sometimes I ask that question and you get this rather mundane answer. And I think that you went very deep into the definition, which matters. That to me is a very insightful comment. So I'd like to get to know you a little better. And one of the most enjoyable parts about this is I like to almost dial it back to when you were a young man. And what hopes and aspirations did you have at that time? And did they help you to get to where you are now? Or was there a deviating path somewhere in your life that took you from what you wanted to be when you were a young child to where you are? Because like we're old enough to be to understand ourselves, the choices we've made, the path we've taken, and if we've if we've remained, as you were talking about, if we've remained true to ourselves, regardless of what we wanted to be. You know, for me, I know my dad wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't really want to, but he wanted me. So I've gone completely against wishes. I probably would have been a really good architect, but doctor definitely not. So I'm just curious about the path you took based on what you wanted to be as a young man versus how you ended up where you are now.
So I've always been very goal oriented. Uh, I used to play rugby, which is like American
Mm-hmm.
football.
Yep, yep.
Played at a very high level.
I'm a Canadian, body, so we have an affinity towards the Commonwealth.
Very good. Well, I played rugby and also did athletics. There was a lot of goal setting, there was a lot of achievement, and I fed off that. So that's always been in me and about making things happen, setting new targets and going on beyond personal, making them, personal bests, improving your times. These sort of things were really important. It was also important that the team won as well through rugby. So I learned a lot of these things at school. I was more a tendency towards engineering, so I was drawn towards engineering, manufacturing engineering. Was the degree that I did. But younger, I was actually during school. I was taken to this World Heritage Site in Scotland called New Lanark. And New Lanark was a village that was set up by a chap called Robert Owen. And what he looked at was setting up a business, but it wasn't just a business. He set up hospitals, he set up schools, he set up accommodations, shops, and he looked after the people within that community. And it was the bridge between the community and people. And that really struck me early in my life, school life. And it stuck with me through. And there's other places that I visited, like Saltaire as well, in Yorkshire, in England. So that's always been stuck with me. And the thing about it is, I do truly believe that manufacturing business creates wealth, but not just wealth for profit, but it actually creates wealth in a way that it can actually have an impact, a positive impact in people's lives. And so the thing is, as I've been drawn into our business, we look at both the social aspects of it, the environmental aspects of our business, and we look at it from an engineering perspective. And that's the thing that's been driving me, even now, and the impact that we can actually make in our local communities, in our environments, in our supply chain through our business. So it goes back to the days of Robert Owen, and it's still, and I think that that can be, and that's back in the Industrial Revolution in Victorian,
Mm-hmm.
Britain. And I think that those principles still count for a lot now, and it can be modernised and have an even greater impact. I and I think that there's a massive role for business, to bring about these changes. And I know there's a lot of philanthropic activity happening with people who've made their billions. But I actually think that it actually goes into a business, and if businesses are run a certain way, they can have a massive impact. They can actually bring about big improvements in people's lives, whilst doing your business model.
There's almost and as a Canadian, as a Quebec-based Canadian, there's almost seems to be a socialist attitude towards the business because it's not just about the actual business itself, but it's to help the people, to support the people around it with whatever ecosystem that they need to work a healthy environment.
Yeah.
Which, but from the sounds of it, you haven't deviated from a young man to now. It sounds like your path has been straight and clear. That's
I,
wonderful.
and it just keeps getting better. And the thing about it is, I'm having more impact in my 60s than I was earlier in my career, or what people sometimes people look at the peak of your career in your late 20s through to your early 40s. The thing is, I'm actually having a bigger impact now, and I'll be honest with you, Alan, I'm having a better time now. I'm enjoying it more. I'm getting more out of it. I'm getting a buzz. I can't even think about retiring because I'm enjoying it so much. And it's not just enjoying it from a self perspective, but it's the impact that I'm making and the friends that I'm making. And you know, the network that I've got now, the things that I'm involved in. I'm working with the UK government, the Scottish government on major change, things like the circular economy. I'm working with international organisations like the B Corp movement. These are things, working with the United Nations on gender equality, working with the United Nations on the Sustainability Development Goals, working with schools, working with universities, things that are, and the thing about it is just getting bigger and bigger every year. And the impact that I'm making is getting bigger and bigger.
As a fellow 60 something, I agree with you. I think that we are we're not to be discounted anymore. I think that the and I don't want to just call it wisdom, because they one of the sort of the cliches is they always talk about, as you get older you get wiser. uh, I think that there's a lot more to it, because it's about knowledge, and that proverbial knowledge is power. We are not as much when you're in your 20. I remember me at 16. I thought I could change world. I could solve world hunger. You have these flashes of brilliance when you're young, but as you get to our stage, you, I think, begin to. You're not here to. I don't want to say you're not here to change the world. You're here with, you have enough knowledge to be able to actually make an impact. And I see it. I don't see retirement anywhere near in my future. I mean, health aside, and I always talk very quietly when I say that. Um, but I think that we have so much to offer, because we don't have the ego of the youth. We accept who we are, and very, as I mentioned earlier, very humbly, we understand the power that we wield to be able to make real substantial change, but without pushing other people to feel uncomfortable. We've learned how to deal with people. We've learned how to deal with situations a little better. We can offer advice. We can help mentor the youth to try to get us to help us to make change. So I want to ask you a little bit about Advanced Clothing Solution. Can you tell me a little bit about, like you've given me wonderful insight into who you are as an individual, as brief as we can fit into the time limit that we have. So tell me a little bit about the company, about Advanced Clothing Solution.
So we operate in the circular fashion economy. And what we do is, our purpose is to prolong the life and maximize the use of textiles. And how we do that is we've got various circular business models. So we use Lexel rental. So we rent out things like tuxedos, women's wear, babies wear, children's wear. We even rent out tents and other outdoor equipment on behalf of other companies. We also do resale. So when an item, you no longer wish to use it, or it's been returned to a company for various reasons, we can actually process them. And how we process them is we sanitize these items, we can clean them, we can finish them off, take the wrinkles out of them, re-waterproof them, we can repair them. And what we do is we bring them back to the best state. They're almost new, and they can be then resold. A lot of these items right now are actually incinerated or end up in landfill. So what we're looking at is actually creating these additional revenue streams. So we've been doing this for nearly 27 years. Now, we started out in rental, clothes rental, tuxedo rental, so it was men's formal wear. Now in Scotland, we have a national dress, and it is a dress, it's a kilt. And
yeah, I know. You're infamous for it, and there's always the jokes that go along with when the wind blows when you're wearing the kilt.
I wear an extra long kilt.
There you go. Okay. Well, that could be actually accommodating for other things.
Well, the thing about it is our national dress costs a lot of money. So, and it's like tuxedos. You don't wear them all the time. Why invest in buying them when you can use them at a reduced, and you don't need to worry about cleaning them or storing them. And anytime you want it, you can hire it. And that was the business model that we started out with, and it's grown and grown and grown. Now, the big thing about it is, from an ACS, we're investing in our processes. So we started out with very lean processes. My background being manufacturing engineering, it was all about operational excellence, looking at the processes, documenting them, making them leaner. And then what we do is create training around the processes. We created our own online academy. We trained our people. We tied them into national qualifications or international qualifications. We call them vocational qualifications. We made modern apprenticeships, so apprenticeship programs. We get funding for that as well. And what we did was we proved that they're competent. So everybody goes through the ACS way of doing business. And then what happened was we started to embrace sustainability more. So we transitioned from lean to green, which was a nice, easy transition. So we started focusing not just about taking time out, not just about improving quality, not just about reducing costs. We also looked at how could we reduce our emissions? How could we reduce the amount of consumption in these processes? How could we transition to net zero? And then we looked at the social side of it as well. How could we train people, not that just what people would say, the best person for the job? How could we train people that have got disabilities, ex-offenders, people from long-term care, refugees that were arriving in the UK? Because we had a major issue. Unfortunately for us in the UK, there was this, we voted, I never voted for it, Brexit, which took us out the European Union and had a big impact. We lost a lot of staff, Alan. We lost 60% of our staff. Wow. Highly qualified people, most of them Polish, highly qualified, very compliant, very productive, easy to manage. And what happened was with Brexit, they all exited, went back to Europe. And the unfortunate thing was that we had to look at new ways of developing, because at the time that they were leaving, our business was growing, and we needed to, and we didn't have the people, we're losing people. So that's why we invested heavily in training and development and looked at disadvantaged groups. And that was where we started to look at the social aspects of our business. At this point in time, 15% of our workforce have registered disabilities, all neurological disorders. 10% of our workforce are from the refugee community. And then we've got 3% of our workforce are actually ex-offenders. And we also have prisoners from the local prison who come in, and we train them up as well, so that when they leave prison, they've actually got qualifications, and also it's part of their transition to stop them reoffending. So we've been looking at a lot of these programs, and what we've done is, so we've looked at the people aspects, the process aspects, and now I'm going to bring in the next thing. We're also looking at technology in a big way, because our competitor is fast fashion, and fast fashion is very low cost, and the consumers are all very price sensitive. So we need to drive out costs. Now, the reason I mentioned The other thing as well is in the UK, they have a thing called the real living wage, which is based on the state of the economy. It's the cost of living. And this is above the minimum wage, which is a legal amount you have to pay. We pay the real living wage, which means our costs are even higher.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of benefits in doing that, but our costs are a lot higher. So what we've been doing is not only developing our people to improve productivity, not only improving our processes, but also looking at innovation, looking at new technologies like AI, like embracing things like nanotechnology, looking at new innovative ways, understanding, for example, we used to we have to sanitize our products. We want to deodorize them, kill off bacteria, pathogens that actually exist in the textiles. We use ozone gas. We learned about this many years ago that in the fire insurance industry, when they want to get rid of the smell of smoke from items that have been in a fire where they've been damaged with smoke, they use ozone. And we started to use ozone for sanitizing our garments, worked with academia to prove it, developed IP in this particular field. So we now sanitize all our garments. This is helping us out a lot in terms it means we don't have to do as intensive cleaning. So the use of ozone gas as a biocide is having a big impact in our business model.
There are two things that I get out of it, and one of them sort of comes back to what you were talking about, social responsibility. And I commend you on it because there is an increasing amount of responsibility to help the people that need help. And that's a wonderful mission that you're on. One thing that I remember from many years ago, because I was in the denim industry at the time, and they actually developed a denim jean brand in a prison where the prisoners were, and sorry if I'm using the wrong terminology there, the inmates, they built a brand of denim jeans that was highly, highly respected in the United States for that social purpose. So that struck a chord to me, but just the fact that you are supporting your community, going back again to your childhood roots. But I do have another question, and this is I'll call it a bit more of I try to make these calls about you. I'm, to be blunt, I'm a terrible listener. I really am. When people say things, and this is the ADHD in me. I lock in on something, so I try to sit back and listen as best I can without interrupting, because there's a fascinating story here. But I'm really curious about the technology, because when you talk about AI and you talk about that, like, these are big concepts. And when you talk about the technology as you're moving it through the process, because I'm a process guy. That's what we do. That's what we build. This is how we manufacture process. Basically, it's the typical manufacturing scenario that is usually handled by spreadsheet, something as simple as that. So and this can be a conversation we can have offline after, but I'm really curious about, how do you manage your process from the article in to the article out? What is the technology, the processing that you use to get it from in to out?
So we have an enterprise resource planning system which is bespoke to our company. We use tracking systems. We've got RFID chips, but we also have barcodes. We've got millions of items, Alan. So what happened was, we're using old tech for our menswear, the barcode, and we use RFID chips for the new items that we're bringing in: women's wear, children's wear, babies wear, outdoor wear. we processes that we use, we have a level of automation. We work with a German company, Dirkop. So a lot of the picking is automated, and it automatically comes down into different lines where it's then inspected, pulled together for the order, and then packed, and then shipped out. We use some clever software in there from Dirkop that can actually identify the different orders, bring them out in that range, look at things like where geographically are they being sent, what customers are they being sent there. So it could actually be a shop, and there's maybe 20 orders going to that shop. So what it does is it picks them, puts them in that order, so it reduces the amount of time. In terms of the other processes, when it comes to the sanitizing of the garments, we've automated. We've actually got it's 3 chambers, and the items are automatically fed in there when from goods receiving. So once they're received, we've checked them, we've scanned them in. They go to they go to sanitization, and then sanitization, they're then directed to inspection, where we inspect them for stains, we inspect them for tears. We do that manually at the moment, because we're now looking at artificial intelligence to be able to do that and identify defects in a garment. Once they've been inspected, if there's a stain, it goes to cleaning. If it needs repaired, it goes to repair. If it doesn't need cleaned or repaired because it's been sanitized, which means it's been deodorized, which means it doesn't need to be cleaned because it has no stains. The thing about cleaning isn't sanitizing. Cleaning is the removal of stains.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in the past, all garments were washed. Every time you wash a garment, you reduce the lifespan of it. You cause damage to the textile, the fibers within that. So what we're doing is reducing the intensive cleaning processes, so you can bypass that. We're looking at some technologies like steam. So we actually have a steam tunnel that takes the creases out of the garment, and then what we can then do is we cover it with a protective film that's made from tree sap. It used to be a hydrocarbon polythene, but now it's tree sap. And then it goes into storage, automatically into storage. The customer comes in, they order it, and then it's picked, and then it goes for packing and dispatched. And then once they've used it, they send it back to us, and so the process begins all over again. And with these processes, we're constantly looking, how can we do them greener, faster, cheaper, and at the best quality? We're constantly looking at that.
Now, you mentioned ERP, and from my perspective, and like I said, we work with a lot of different ERPs. I'm not sure what system you're using, but it sounds either far more complex than anything I've run into, and we work with Oracle and SAP. So it sounds far more complex than anything that I've ever heard of, because most ERPs that I know are usually in and out. There are factors within the critical path that are managed by the ERP, but usually the critical path is managed in an external method. Is that what you find is happening with you?
Our system's been designed around our business. We used to have a software development team. It's outdated, it's slower, it needs improvement, but it helps us with the core business. We can track items, we know where the items are, we know the amount of time, we can work out the productivity of our operatives. It gives us a lot of that, but I know technology's coming on a lot. We're looking at how can we embrace AI in this. We're looking at creating digital twins, Alan. I've actually got a project with the local university, and we're actually the first project we did was we actually created, and it was a very simple one. We actually created a digital twin of our water consumption, because I've got this thing about the conservation of water. And what we did is we actually modelled how the water comes into the system and where it goes, how it's consumed throughout the business. And then from there, what we were able to, we created this model, and we looked at ways that we could reuse water, reduce water, and we even took into things like rainwater capture. So we harvest rainwater, and we looked at other ways that we could do it, and we also calculated could we recycle the laundry water and reuse it the way that you reuse the oil in the engine of your car. So we did all this using digitizing, and we're now doing individual processes and coming up with different scenarios. Most of our garments move horizontally around the business.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was, what happens if we brought in vertical carousels? So what I'm looking at right now is actually through this digital twin in terms of storage. We're looking at the horizontal movement opposed to the vertical storage of the garment. And what we've been doing is creating this model, a digital twin of this, so that I can actually justify to our board and investors to look at vertical storage. I think vertical storage would actually help us greatly. I think it means that we could actually process things a lot quicker, take up less space, and space is a premium for us right now. So digital twinning, I'm sold on. There's a lot of other spin-offs from it. There's things like, so when we can look at the ergonomics of the operator, we can improve their health and well-being through that. We can also look at things like sustainability, identify hotspots throughout the organisation through the energy use. We can look at things like how consumables flow in and flow out of the business, understand what those consumables, the quantity, the weight of those consumables with a view to reduce it. I can do all this virtually and play around with scenarios. I can play around with things like shifts. I can put in a new piece of equipment. I create a whole new plant, all in my head, all in the screen in front of me, and play around with all of this. And then when I come up with something that really works, I can sell it.
It's funny because one of the questions that I like to ask is I go, well, how did you innovate? And I think that I don't need to ask that question. You've answered that multiple ways. But I want to bring up, our time is ticking down, and I hate for these things to end abruptly. So there are two things that I would like to possibly address. The first one is, because we want to broadcast this podcast, and what we do is we usually use LinkedIn as one of our mediums to do it. And what we always try to do is get like a little 30-second to a 1 minute, I'll call it an introduction, a pitch, whatever you want to call it, so that I can put that up on LinkedIn, and that little pitch will draw people to watch this, because I think you have a lot to say. I know I definitely have to bring Mark Harrop. I don't know if you know Mark Harrop from which PLM. He is a huge man in the industry. I want to get certain people's attention, so I would love to get a 30-second to a 1 minute clip of you. And then the last thing, and I think we're probably better to do that before I ask you the last question, which is always, if you were to talk to a younger, and I won't say to a younger self, because you've been true to who you are, but if you are talking to you run into the pub and you're sitting at the bar, you're having a beer, and you run into a young man that is just entering or has expressed interest in circular, what would you say to him to help guide him on his path to be able to make the impact that you are making in the world right now? So why don't we, like I said, because we have 5 minutes, and I know that question can probably get long. So with your permission, I would love to get like just a little clip that I could pull out of this video to be able to use on LinkedIn. Would that be okay with you?
Of course. Do you want it about me or about what my view?
To me, it's not about you. It's not about your view. It's just about, in 30 seconds to a minute, what do you think is going to make the greatest impact because and I think it's maybe more about your goals, what you want to do, the impact you want to make in the world, which is going to have someone look at that and go, I have to listen to more. That's all I care about. I care about whatever you feel. If you have to stand up in front of your board and tell them, give them a 1 minute, the typical elevator pitch, what would that be?
So the big thing for me, Alan, is that I truly believe in sustainability, both the environmental and social side. My view is the circular economy is huge. I think we've not even touched it yet. And the thing about it is that it's all about manufacturing. All you have to do is put two letters in front of that, remanufacturing, and that's the circular economy. It's absolutely enormous. There's too much focus right now by business on making product. It should be about using products and about maintaining those products. And I just think the opportunity is vast from a circular economy perspective. I think the thing about it is it's boundless, it's infinite. And, so from my perspective, the impact I would say is embrace the circular economy. Look at it from an engineering perspective. Look at how we can perpetuate the use of resources. So what we're really looking at, no longer input, process, output. It's circular. Think continuous flow. And I don't think I'm making the impact on that. I don't.
No. That was brilliant. That was perfect. That soundbite will be perfect. So now,
Alan, can I just see one of the things I would say to you? I've been trying to get into Amazon for a while. And one of the things is I was in the Amazon Sustainability Accelerator. We were blessed to get picked for it, and I learned a lot about their business. But the thing about it really taught me is the scale of Amazon just overwhelmed me. And I just thought, I can't, when you're talking about over 1 million employees globally, the volume of items that that they're processing on a daily basis, the technologies they're using really blew my mind. But you know what? We're a very small organization. We're tiny. But what I recognised in Amazon is the same throughout the whole world, all industry, is this thing about production of new items. Because I actually think if they were to look at the whole thing about sustainability, about reselling items that are returned, the returned items they've got, realising that capital through the circular economy, circular business models. And that's the thing that's frustrating me right now, is the thing that I can look at. I actually think the cost of processing returned items is equivalent to the cost of, basically processing those items to resell them.
And I agree with you there. I agree with you there because you're seeing this new business model where rather than returning something, they are saying keep it and repurpose it. I'm seeing that. So, like I said, we're kind of there, but I really want to get your, a couple minutes among friends is a good thing. I'm really curious about what would you say to that young man that you run into, young man, young woman, sorry, if you run into someone at the pub, what advice would you give them?
I would say to them the big thing, and the thing, everything is possible. Nothing's impossible. When you hear the word impossible, just think I'm possible. And the thing about it is that, from my experience, if you put your mind to it, you believe in yourself, you surround yourself with people that are similar to yourself, you can move mountains, you can make things happen. So believe in yourself, dream, use your imagination, listen, and what you do is be as innovative as you can. Drive, believe, put your energy into it, your heart and soul in it, and you'll change the world. I truly believe that.
Michael, I have to tell you, I am inspired. I didn't know. I think one of the greatest surprises for me is when we set up these calls, these interviews. I never know who I'm going to be talking to. I never know the direction the conversation is going to go into, but I am honestly honored to have met you, because I think that you truly are a change agent. And I believe that in a very subtle, humble way, you understand it. And you understand it beyond the buzzword of circular economy. You understand it behind the hype that they talk about. And I think that you are doing it. And I think you are making an impact that I'm proud that we had this opportunity to talk.
Thanks, Alan.
Oh, my pleasure. So what I will do is I'm going to just send you a little clip, that clip that we talked about. I will email that to you. I'd love to get you to okay it, that you're happy about it, the quality of it. And I'm also going to, just as a follow-up, I'm going to send you just a quick little, because you talk about technology, I'm going to send you just a quick little video of something that may inspire you to be able to help to automate the processes that you're currently doing that fall out of the realm of anything that you're doing at the moment, and may be of value in improving the technology beyond what you're doing. Okay, so Michael, I thank you. I really do. It was a pleasure, and I would love to have a follow-up conversation that is perhaps a little more casual than this. And yeah, because like I said, it's I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in what you're doing more because you're actually doing it and not just talking about it.
There's a lot. I mean, Alan, the one thing I would say, that if you said what our strengths are, or my strengths, and some of my colleagues that I work very closely with, is collaborating. So if there's ever anything, we share everything we do. We don't believe in IP or protecting, or my view is go out there, share what you're doing, get people to give you feedback. If anybody, even in your network, would like to hear about some of the things we're doing, the technologies, the stuff we're doing with people, I'm open to share. The other thing, if you're ever over in Scotland, look us up. We'll take you out for golf, and we'll give you a tour of our facility.
Well, I would love a tour of the single malts. I am a big fan. It's all I drink. I don't drink beer. I don't drink wine. I am just a single malt. I'm a Glenlivet, Glenfiddich kind of guy. I like clean. I don't like peaty. I don't like mossy. I don't like smoky. I like a nice clean Glenlivet 15 is my favorite.
Alan, I'm in the heartlands of where I live, of distilleries. Everywhere I look, there's a distillery. I'm Lefroy myself, which some people, I would say I've got an educated palate, but I like the Lefroy, but I was brought up in Lefroy, the family.
Yes, I find it a little smoky for me, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So again, I want to thank you. That certainly gives me a reason to come over to see Scotland. And I will follow up within the course of the next few days, that little clip and everything, and we will talk. I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Excellent. Okay. Looking forward to it, Alan. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Take care.